Hello there, and welcome to my little arty corner here on YouTube. I'm Angela Porter. I love to draw. I love to share my thoughts and hints and tips and how I draw things, the techniques I use with you, in the aims that I can encourage you to draw, encourage you to create, give you a bit of confidence, whatever it may be. And if you find that what I'm doing doesn't suit you, I won't be upset, because you are you. And perhaps by finding out that what I do doesn't suit you means that you can tick one thing off your list in finding out what kind of art you do like to create. So, and sometimes that's more important than finding out what we do. It's part of our journey. I'm forever trying new things out. So, thank you to everybody who's subscribed. I appreciate you all very much. Older subscribers or more long-term subscribers compared to the new ones. You're all equally important to me. I think it's fantastic. Thank you for the lovely comments about yesterday's video. I haven't answered them yet, as I've just finished my quota of work for today for Daydreams book. So I thought, right, okay, while I'm waiting for an Amazon delivery, before I can collapse and sleep, I thought I'd come and do this. Have a look at this. Excuse the noise, background noise. My microphone picks it up outside. My windows are open. It's quite warmish outside, but it's lovely to have cooler, fresh air coming in. Should really close the one closer to my desk, but it's quite nice having that fresh air. So, one of the comments, or a number of you left comments saying, yes, we'd love to see how you draw the arts and crafts flower. Now, I'm not going to do the whole thing, because I'll do some of the leaves with you and we'll see how we get on. But this at the top is the important thing. And this one is inspired by William Morris. I can't remember which one of his patterns it was. I just need to put my autofocus on lock. That's what the beep was. And let's get a start on. I've got here, this is a piece of Ohuhu Mixed Media Paper. And I've coloured it actually on both sides with Distress Oxide inks, but I've decided I like this side and I like the green. Now, which one? I quite like this one, which has got quite a bit of green on it. Let me have a look. Does that help? Not a lot. It may be the settings on my screen. I haven't turned the brightness up. And I know I can go over this colour if I wish. This one actually appeals to me. No, I'm going to go with this one. Now this is about, let me have a look. It's 25 centimetres long and 8.5 centimetres wide. And in inches, as I head to get a ruler that's in inches, it's about 10 inches tall. In fact, it is 10 inches tall, and it's 3 and 3/8 of an inch wide, so a little bit less than 3.5 inches. So 10 by 3.5 will do. And I'm going to choose which one I want at the top. Now, the brown on the bottom does suggest earth to me, so let's have the leaves in the earth and the head in the sky. And I'm just reaching for a pencil, because I'm going to start very simply by drawing the basic shapes of this flower. There's an internal kind of oval here. There's another kind of oval shape here. You see, this distance is much smaller than this one. And the same here, we've got a kind of oval where these bits of the petals we can see here are much smaller than the amount we can see here. And that's what gives it that fullness of that volume to it. So I'm going to start somewhere in the middle. I'm going to give myself space above, below, and about equal amounts on either side. And I'm going to start with that oval in the middle. It doesn't have to be precise. I have put this a bit too far to one side, so an eraser will come in useful. So let me just move that over a little bit, and that will do. So this will make up the middle bit where all the pollen-y stuff is. So for the next ones, I want the top bit about here, and I'll want quite a long distance down to, oh no, that's not the bottom bit. The next one is quite the outer one. So it's still not very much space here, perhaps even a little bit less space there. It's not critical, by the way, it's just me fussing and fiddling. I'm just going to draw this in as an oval. And then the next one, I'm drawing in as an oval, and I do want this to have quite a lot more space beneath it, because I quite like having large petals falling down. Now then, I'm actually going to start not with the inside, but from this section here. And I'm going to roughly put in a centre line this way, okay? So my first petal is going to occupy this space. The next one is going to go up around here. Can you see how I'm curving that line around to meet the edge? Yeah? So if I bring my drawing in, we can compare and contrast here. In fact, perhaps I could leave them side by side. Okay, so I'm beginning to get this one going up and round, and if anything, it's actually going to come around like this, because can you see how this has gone around there? And this one will do the same thing, so I'm going to have the top of the petal going inside like this. You'll see it a lot easier when I ink it in, and then on this side we're going to have humpy petals going down and then like that, but I want that middle one to be above the other two. I am going to make my petals kind of frilly on the edge. I'm actually giving 3 curvy bits on each one. You could just do 2, or you could just leave them curved. So that is the start of my flower, and I'm going to ink this in before I do anything else. Okay, so I'll start where I began here with this one. I'm using an 05 Sakura Pigma Micron, like so. Then I'm going to go here and have this one curve around the edge of this bloom. Same here, I'm going to... Now my lines may not completely follow my pencil lines because I am making adjustments as I go. And then this one is one I do want to ink in first. And here I've noticed that the top of this was quite flat and uninteresting. So I've made it more of an upside down wide and short U shape. But I'm still putting those on. I'm going to do the same kind of thing with these other parts. But remember, they're tucked underneath, so we don't necessarily have to have all 3 bumps showing. So that essentially is the middle of my flower. All these smaller lines and so on I'll put in later on. Now then, go back to my pencil, because we've just got... Isn't that interesting? See, I didn't take it all the way out there. Oh, that is interesting. What a numpty I am. That was just me drawing what I thought should be there rather than anything else. So I'm definitely going to redo the outer one and perhaps try and leave, so I'm not going to get confused this time. There we go, that's better. So I am going to draw my stem in, which is going to be a very long one. It's not very straight. It doesn't have to be very straight, mind you. But I'm just going to draw a guide in for my stem. And if it wobbles and gets a bit wonky, that's fine. And I'm going to do this device here they use in Zentangle. Now I know it comes from an artist's book. I've got the book here somewhere. Can't remember the name. I'll try and remember and pop it in the description. They call this tuckering because we're going to tuck this into what seems to be a slit. So I'm just going to imagine these. Don't want to do it that way. No, I'm going to do it this way because that's what would happen. It would bulge upwards. And then we'd have little bits here that would be darker, would it? No, let's do it the other way. Doesn't matter which way we do it. We'd have little bits underneath then, perhaps where there's more shadow, where this, perhaps, we'll see what happens. Okay, so again, I'm going to use my pencil to draw these in now then. Let's see if I can zoom in. There we go, on my work. So these ones, you can see, I'm going to start in the middle. I'm going to go out, back, down, around, and then around here, and put some lumpy bumpy bits in and just connect it. Mirror it on the other side, but it doesn't have to be an exact copy. As in reality, petals and so on aren't exact copies of one another. Now if I look at this petal, can you see the shape of the top part of it? It's a curve up, a little bit upwards. It goes upwards, along, and then dives back down. So let's pop that in there. The next petal just curves up and out a bit, up and out a bit. And then at the top, we've got one that goes up like that, one that goes up like that, oops, and we've got one in the middle. So all I've got to do now, I've got these lines on, is to add the bottoms of the petals. So we're doing those 3 bumps, and I'm trying to make the bumpy bit in the middle bigger than the other 2, just for some interest. Try to do that with the ones, yes, I've done it right. Talk about confusing oneself. And then at the back here, there. So I'll link those in and you can see. So here I'm starting with a curve away from the stem and then coming back towards it. This curve goes up and then down, and then I'm putting the bumpy bits underneath. The other side I'm curving away from the stem, round. I'll put the bumpy bits in and then I can draw this in to connect. On this side is going to go up and down, and then I can add the bumpy bits which then can join with that petal. And here I've made the end of the, I could have had that just joining along, but I didn't. I made it go back upwards just to look like that petal might be tucked under just a little bit. And we'll do the same here. This one, I'll do the same at the end. Just like here, just bringing it, starting to bring it in, but we won't see the whole of the petal because the illusion is they're tucked under one another. I do like to do them in pairs on either side. It's easy to get a bit of a balance. So that's basically the flower all done. I'll come back to the middle bit. Now then, I'm going to zoom out again because I can do that. And I'm going to put my pen to one side because I do need to draw the whole of the stem in. So I'm going to draw a pencil line down one side, and I'm going to have it hopefully getting wider towards the bottom. And I think I might actually move that tuck, the faux slit in the paper up a bit, because I think that might actually work a bit better. And yeah, I've made the stem wider at the bottom than at the top, so I'm going to put this in like that, then like that, and we'll deal with everything else afterwards. okay? So I am going to draw my leaves in with pencil, okay? Now, you could choose to do any leaves you like. If you're not up to or don't feel that you want to do such complicated leaves, make them very simple. Muka would work, flux would work. If you're looking at Zentangle patterns, they'd work wonderfully on here as a leaf, or poke leaf would. But I'm arts and craftsy. So here I'm putting something on that looks a little bit like an upside down shark's fin. And those will be my, actually they bend in the other way, but I'm doing it, you know, differently here. So this one, I'm going to start with a curve that goes like that. And I'm putting everything in pencil first because I personally, actually, I can do this because that's exactly what happened in the end here. So I am going to put the stem in, that would make more sense, and then you're going to be able to see. And at the top I'm just having this stem flaring outwards just a little as we reach the bud, as if there's something supporting the bud underneath. You know, you often get a lump behind it, don't you? I'm not doing the rest of the stem, I'm going to see how this goes. So here I'm going to change it slightly and have it almost like a fishtail in some way, and that'll work quite nicely. Okay, the next leaf I'm going to create that kind of shape here. Then I'm going to come back on this side like so. I'm then going to create a little shape like this, and then I'm going to connect it there. And I'll do something similar on the other side. I've made the bottom a bit wider than I would like, but I'm going to trust that this will work out like that. It's not too shabby actually. Next one, I'm going to start a little bit further down. And here I'm going to have the curve going like this. So it's almost like a J, I suppose, or it's a backwards S sort of. I haven't got the big loop end and the S. Then from here I'm going to come over down to the centre, and then I'm going to do another curve on the other side, round, along and together like that. And again I'm going to do something very similar on the other side. I'm not trying to entirely copy it or make it exactly the same, it doesn't have to be. So I've most probably made this part much smaller than the other side, but it's a similar shape and size. Okay, so with me so far? Hope so. So the next one is a bit more complicated, because yeah, they get more complicated because the leaves get bigger the further down the stem you go. So a very slight S shape, back down, up to another S shape and a hook, one of these, one of those. I'm going to go back this way with a curve and a little bit of a leaf there. What makes these are the veins you put inside, they really do. So on this side I'm going to put one of those in. This, we're going to have the curve round. Like that. The next one has kind of got two leaves all in one, but I think I'll skip that one because I'm not going to get everything on otherwise. So let's do one that's really quite long. Now this is going to be fun. Okay, so I'm putting a curve on the end, and then I'm going to come back up around here and I'm going to get it to meet that line. This is where the leaf has curled over or under on itself. So that's what I've made happen there. And I'm going to do the same kind of thing on the other side. Like so. Which works quite nicely. Now my next leaves are here, and I want to show you how I've created one of those at least. So I may move all of, in fact, let me get rid of this a moment because that's distracting me. So I am going to go up like this, back down, have one going out, and then I'm going to have a curl that goes like this. I'm going to curl it back that way. I'm not going to start from this point, I'm going to start somewhere along here like I did here. So I'm going to go up, then I'm going to have a little bit like that, another bit like that, and then it can come down this way. And then here is where I'm going to pop in this slit in the paper. May not go all the way, I may just keep it here and here, but I've put a large area in for now. And then on the other side of this, I'm going to do something similar. So I'm going to draw like this. So I've got the pointy bit, another little pointy bit and back, and then shape like that. So this really was an S shape, and then I'm going to come back and over like that. And now I can put this tuck in, being careful or being aware of where I am putting everything. I'm trying to think, I think I do want this to just come out on the other side a little bit so we can see it easily where it is, like so. Yeah. And then we've got the rest of the stem here. And I'm going to have it wider at the bottom. I'm going to curve the end like this, but I'm also going to do this so it makes it look like it's quite a sturdy kind of stem. And I am just going to pop the stem in like that. Now before I do anything else, I'm going to take this away, leave that there. I'm going to erase all my pencil lines now, because if I don't, I'll forget later on, and we are going to add some colour and shading to this. Oh yes, we are. Oh gosh, this is why I don't like erasing or using pencils, because I'm forever scrunching my paper up. It's never a good thing. I'll flatten it again. I will. I'll get it nice and flat. Come on. There we are, it's not so bad. Okay, so this is where I am at the moment. I've got all of this drawn in. Now I do want to add some details to this, and for that I'm going to use an O3 pen. So I want to put some kinds of, like slits or splits, the veins in these. So this one here I'm just going to very simply do by adding a line that goes down to the middle, and here I'm going to create some what they call line weight. Inky solder is what I like to call it. Here I'm going to start at the bottom and I'm going to go all the way around here, and then I'm going to bring one down like that. So I'm connecting the points, choosing the one that goes all the way around first, connecting the points, and then I'll add some ink at the bottom. So I'll do that again on this side. This is the longest distance I can draw a line in one go. And then I can add a line going there. I'm going to add some ink where they join together, but I'm also going to add ink at the bottom. This one doesn't matter, they're both about the same, so I'm going to go towards the top one first and then towards the bottom one. Here I'm going to add some ink there just to join those together, and some there. I'm not going to add any smaller veins on these leaves than this. I'm going to keep it very simple, because that was very much a feature of the arts and crafts movement. There was some complexity, but nothing like realism. Quite simple shapes, minimal detail, so you get the idea of what's going on. Sorry, I just moved awkwardly and my back hurt. I've been sat here for too long today. I have been up and down, I haven't been sat here for hours and not moving. But my back needs to do something else soon. So the same here. Chose the longest route for one of these and then just drew from the other little bits to create that shape. Now this you can use for shading, or you can just add colour to the whole leaf without any regard. Either way will work, because that's what was done, kind of. And this kind of stylisation really appeals to me. I'm not boasting or bragging. It's not that I can't draw realistically, but I just prefer the stylised forms that take the essence or show the essence of something. You can identify what it is, but there's an elegance without all of the detail and, you know, almost like a photographic rendering of something. This is a more personal response, I think. And I find it easy to do stylised work, but I know that I'm learning that not everybody does. And but I really do, and I understand it, and this is how I see things as shapes and so on. Okay, so this part here, I'm going to start at the tip and I'm going to go right the way around the middle of this. I am not going down to that point. If I go down to that point, you lose some of the feeling of this twisting or curving around. So here I'm going to take this line all the way up here, but again, I'm going to go between them, but I'm not going to join that line up. Do you see what I did? Did you see what I did? If you didn't, I'll show you again. I'll zoom in. So for this one, I'm going to start at the tip. I'm going to split this section in half and I'm going to keep going. I am not going down there. I'm stopping when I join this line. Okay? And then start from this edge. I'm going to go all the way up the centre. Again, splitting this up, and there'll come a point where I hit this edge. That's where I want to go. I don't want to go up to that corner, because we'll end up with this line here that doesn't make sense. This way, these lines show, or help to show, that this part of the leaf has curved over. Okay? I'll be doing the same kind of thing here, so you'll get to see it a couple of times. Once you've worked out how it works, it really is a really good thing to be able to do. Well, I think so. So again, I'm just adding these veins here and just adding that little bit of ink where they join. I'm just checking I didn't put any weight there. But let's just get these done. I like to do this as I go, because there's less chance of me missing bits out and getting frustrated later when I can't make them look as if they were done at the same time. So here's the last pair of leaves, although I could put some tiny leaflets here. So let's start with these. So it's going to be the same thing where I'm keeping this going at the centre, this one the same. See? Haven't taken it to this point or this point, I've taken it halfway between those two lines, and the same here, halfway between. So this is going to, now I could take the line that way, but I'm going to take it this way and have this one kind of branching off. And again, I'm going to stay between these two lines, not go towards that point or where the outer lines here join. I'm going to keep it going on that line between them, and then these here. Again, I'm just going to add some weight here. There we go. This one, the same kind of, actually this one can go all the way round, it makes sense too. And again, keeping in between these two outer lines, not going to the corners, but going halfway along. And then we can join all the others in, however they wish to be joined. See, I won't get too hung up on making that bit, these bits perfect, but this kind of way that the leaves curve is important if you want it to look like they're curling around and to give some volume to them. Okay, next job, I'm going to stay with the leaves for a moment, but I'm going to go back and do something similar to the flower. I am going to add some line weight. So I'm going to make the line thicker to the left and bottom of each leaf, and the stem as well. So that's the left and bottom, this is the bottom here. Even to the stem I'm going to add some weight. So in this leaf, and I am joining the outside edges of the leaf now to the stem with some extra weight as well, because I could have done that as I was going along, but I didn't. This is the bottom here. This here is a little bit on the bottom, and where we've got these little dips or little cuts in the leaf, I'm just going to add some ink there just to emphasize them. I'll do one leaf on this side and you can compare and contrast with the other and see the difference it makes. So in this leaf I'm going around the underside of this, stopping about halfway down this curve, because it then starts to change from being underneath to going on top, as it were. This one's going to go underneath and it's going to stop about halfway up, turns around back towards the top, but then we've got a little bit of underneath here. Again, I'm just adding some ink in that little corner there. This is all around the top, so under here is where I'm going to add some weight there, the shadow, and then this little bit here is partly on the left, and then you can see the difference that this makes compared to this one. It adds interest, it adds dimension, it adds the suggestion of shadow. I'm a bit heavy-handed with this, but you can be as heavy-handed or light-handed as you wish. So I'm going to do the same here now. And here. There's a little bit there that's still a bit on the left, so I'm just going to add that. And this is all underneath, more or less. Yeah, I'm just going to add line weight where these join the stem. So this little bit here is towards the darkness, as my head goes to song by the darkness, which happens to be a Welsh sort of like indie rock band. Can't remember what the song is, I can hear it in my head. I do like the darkness. So there's that one done, perhaps a little bit on this side maybe. There we go. These ones are going to be a bit more difficult where they curve over. I'll come back to those and explain what I do there in a moment. Let's just get to these. Remember, left and bottom. The bottom edges. And don't forget to add some ink into the little corners just to emphasize them to a degree. This is underneath. This part here is underneath till about halfway around the curve. This one the same, adding ink there. This one's sorted to the left and this one's sorted to the left as well. Made a bit of a pointy bit there, but that's fine. I don't mind having that altered slightly. It's a bit clunky, but it'll do. Now then, these ones, it's the same kind of approach. So this part of the curve here is just turning to be as if it's below. This part here, this is on the top, but this edge here is on the left until it starts to flatten out. This is definitely on the left and the bottom. Again, I'm just going to add some ink there. I'll add some ink there as well. And here the same. This little bit here is left, but it's really this bit here that I want to get. There we go. Here, this is the left-hand side. Here, the left-hand side, and we don't really have any bottom sides there, so that works. Just adding some ink there, so some here, this is left. A little bit here that could be considered on the left or bottom, rather. Same there, but we're adding inkiness. So this here is the left and bottom, as is this. And this too is on the left-hand side, so we're getting two lots of line thickness, adding the line thickness side by side. Got this here. There. And here. So two left to do. So the same approach. I'll start here. This part is on the left and towards the bottom, so we can do all of that line. This part is towards the top of the image. It's pointing towards the top. But this bit is more to the left. Here's underneath, so we can add some ink there. Just taper that in if I can. Here we're going to add line weight all the way down this line because it's to the left. This is towards the left and the bottom there, so we can add some line weight there. Perhaps just a little bit here where they join. So we've got a little bit here that can be considered towards the bottom, I suppose, so we'll add a little bit of line weight there. But then this is where most of the line weight will be. And let's not forget the inky glue to hold the leaf to the stem. And then we've got this one to do, so again, to the left. Now, I always do left and bottom. That's how I make adding shadows or, thickening lines, line weight, consistent in my artwork. Whatever way you do it will work as long as you make it consistent in all that you do. Because this is stylized art, it's not realism. We're not trying to represent things photographically or make them look totally realistic in any way, shape or form. But we do want some line thickness, line weight to help with dimension and interest as well. It's a bit needed here. This would have quite a bit of shadow in the centre part here. Not so much here because it's pointing upwards, but underneath here we'd have a fair amount, because that would be where this stem comes in. And I'm also bringing this shadow down on either side of the stem as if it's going into an area of darkness, so that's added that slit there. This is Angela's style of doing things. there. Okay, so those are the, I'll zoom out that button. I'll have a quick swig of cold coffee. I brought it upstairs with me. So I was expecting a call back from the GPs, from the doctor's surgery. Nothing wrong. I just needed to have a review of the HRT I've been on. Too much information? Possibly. But, you know, it's important. It's making a difference to me. So I've got that prescribed for another 6 months with a review then of how I'm getting on with it. And if I've got any problems along the way, especially with the boobies, to get in touch straight away and discuss it. So there we are. So we've got this. I will find a finer pen because I really do want to put some very fine lines. This here, I'm going to just put that in the middle because there's often like a hole going up inside the middle of stems, which is meant to be there. Okay, so that's all of my leaves done. Petals, same idea. We're going to put a thicker line towards the left and the bottom. And I'm also going to add ink in these little sections here just to emphasize them. So this is beginning to curve over, so this petal will be underneath. This will be, needs a bit more. This side, all of this is the left hand side, so we're going to add ink there. I'm going to go up here, down, like so, and a little bit here because that's towards the bottom. Now round here where the petals meet, I am going to make these petals thicker here, and I'm also going to add ink there. I'm going to start doing that because it'll help me make some sense of this as well. Right, that actually will look quite good. And here. Right, let's stick to this side. We've almost done this one here. I'm just going to add some more line weight. Add some inky glue there to the left and bottom. Left and bottom. This is the left. And this one, just going to add some inky glue at the base. Do need to go out later actually, I'm nearly out of milk. I just heard a car starting and I think I've got to go for milk. That's fine, I can do that. We've got to go and have blood taken tomorrow by the vampires at the surgery. I've never been to a doctor's surgery as much as I have in the last few months. It's been crazy. It's this growing old doesn't come by itself, you know. And of course I had my burnout, I suppose, back in February. So, which of course is exacerbated by menopause, perimenopause, so, and amongst other things. So it's all interesting at the moment, but I'm getting there. Look, I've done a day's work-ish, not 12, I don't do 8 hours a day. I can't at the moment, but I may later on do another colouring template. I may not, it depends how my back feels. I really could do with a walk actually. Alright, so I'm going to do the left of these and bottom, just to bring these out, not forgetting the inky glue between them. These, it's definitely going to be around the bottom. This is the left part of this petal. And you can see how the darkness of the ink is helping to separate these and bring some structure to this as well. Beginning to look a lot more like stained glass, but I like stained glass, so that's okay. There we go. So with these ones, again, it's this to the left and so on. And then under the bottom, like so. Just widening these at the bottom. So that essentially is my flower, and oops, so I've managed to shift my mat. And leaves. I've got some space here, so I could put some little leaflets in. Which I think I may do. That's a strange looking one, isn't it? But it's fine, it'll be fine. Lots of added line weight, it'll be fine, she says, hopefully. And then this one we can do something sort of similar. Like so. Very odd shapes, but they seem to work well with this. It's not that they don't fit in, they do. And as soon as you add the veins here, it's sort of like it just brings it all together and makes it all work. So that's quite interesting. And I did say I might put one or some here, and I think I might, but just very small and simple, I think. Again, I'm just going to do exactly the same approach with the line thickness and so on. And then this one, perhaps. I'll make it a little bit bigger and give it a little curve on the end. So and like so. There we are. This is the left, so that'll be fine. A little bit there, and there we are. We've got an interesting thing. Hopefully I've got a finer pen. If I haven't, I will use this one. I may not have. Thinking about it, but let's have a look. Have I got an 01? That's an 08. That's no use. No, I haven't got an 01, which is what I really want. I've got plenty of them, just not in that pencil case. Hang on. One has another pencil case close to hand. There may be one in here, we can hope. I'm very sniffy and snotty today. Oh, there we are, we got an 01. Fabulous. Oh, I think it's the cooler weather, drier air. Well, I'm not really sure. I'm going to add some textural lines to the stem. And I am going to break these up in places. I'm going to try and get them really close to the edge, going all the way up. I don't want them necessarily perfectly whole or, you know, having no gaps in. In fact, I want the gaps to give it a kind of organic kind of texture. Try not to put the gaps in the same place, Angela. Like so. And this then will be fine and dandy. And I will just thicken these towards the end and the top as well, just again to give that feeling that things are a little bit thicker there. Okay. So, next job, we need to add some contour lines. That's what these are called. They help with the eye believing, or the brain believing, there's a curve to these things. And to do this, we really need to work out where the highlight's going to be. And I think the highlight is going to be around here. So I've still got some pencil there, so let's deal with that. Okay, so I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to just pop in where I think my highlights are most likely to be, because I can rub my pencil out again. And they're going to get narrower as we go around, perhaps. We can just bring it like that, so we've got a ring of highlight. And again, we can do some highlights here. And some here, perhaps, where it's going to be a very narrow highlight there. In fact, these could most probably go down a little bit like that. Now I'm going to use those lines just as a very simple guide. Oh, 2 ticks. I got to blow my nose. Sorry. That's better. Right. I'm just using these as a kind of guideline as to where my contour lines are going to go. So here I'm just going to have them going up here, here, and I'm making them bend in the way that the petal's bending here. Some of the lines are going to be longer and shorter, and I'm adding dots at the ends so that we can just have an uneven edge. And I am going to put some in coming from particularly these parts upwards to begin with. And again, it's about adding the lines, but I'm not taking all of them long, making all of them long rather. I want some quite short, and I want more along the edge, which would be in shadow, than I do in the middle. Now I've got a lot here that are very similar length, but I'm actually going to go back and make some adjustments here, where I just want to add some in between them to really help to bring some depth of shadow there, as if this really is in the shadow. So hopefully you can see what's going on. The other thing I can do as well is I can go back and add weight at the end of these lines. Just a little touch, which will again give that feeling of more ink, more shadow when you're using dark coloured inks. If it was white ink, it'd be more ink, the bigger the highlight. But I am going to just go back, and where some of these lines have crossed over one another, or all of them, I'm just going to add some line weight to the bottom of the lines, just again to add that inkiness there. Yeah? It might be that I might want to just put some dots going across. This actually needs one here. And here. Because along the edges I do feel we'd have more there, because the petals will curve up and down, but to the side as well. Yeah? Which is why really it needs to be a kind of dome shape there. So let's carry on and do this and see how I get on. I haven't done this for ever such a long time. I've forgotten how lovely it is to do, actually. And the simple difference it makes. I'm using contour lines. I could have done stippling, but with stippling you don't really get to choose what direction the dots go in. It's more to do with the density of dots to give you an idea of where all the shadow is. With this you use the lines and break them up to give those little sparkles, as I call them, of highlight without the ink. What's nice here is I do like this background stenciled pattern showing through. I am just going to go and pop in some things, add some dots. Just help with the weight at the bottom of these lines. I find it easier to do the line weights as I go along. Because I don't have trouble, you know, I get frustrated when I have to go back and do things like this. My trick is, well, my advice here is to do less than you think you're going to need. Look at it and then assess. Because if you're working directly in ink, if you haven't put enough on, you can always go back and add more. But if you've added too much, you can't take the black lines away. And it is about that balance. Now this has got more ink on than the other one, but you know, it could just be a slightly darker pepple. I don't know what a pepple is, but we're having pebbles here today. Like so. Yeah. So we do this the same with all of them. Now it might be that these little bits here are the ones that are the key to getting the lines, the most of the lines in, and the shape of the petal. Petal, not pepple. Seriously. These aren't quite so easy to do, but you just need to persevere here. As this is going underneath, I am going to put quite a bit of ink here, and I'm also going to add weight on this side as well, just to help with that idea that this is, you know, in shadow because it has gone underneath the upper petal. I'm beginning to get a shadow here, so I can start to have more open space, more dotted lines perhaps. And here there's another one, and then here I can put some in. That one. Yeah. Just keep going. Oh, how are we doing? Gosh, it's been nearly an hour. Minus a few minutes of blather. Not too bad, is it? Now, whether I add any colour today, I don't know. I'd like to. But this could end up quite a long video. Which I've been told that's not an issue. Most of you people have left comments. People who've left comments have said no, we don't mind. We can always stop it whenever. Watch it at our own leisure. So we'll see. But it is a process that takes a wee bit of time to do. It's also fascinating to watch, I think. So, while I'm doing this, if I've got anything to explain, I'll explain. But this is what makes the flower look a bit more realistic, I suppose, is using this. And you'll see in real flowers you do have variations in where the lines are in them and so on. So don't get too hung up on making everything, you know, exactly the same distance. In fact, if you vary how close these lines are to each other, it can look a lot more realistic in a way. And I'm probably putting more lines on than I really need to get this done, but do you know, I'm enjoying the process. I've been working with digital art today, and it's quite nice to get to do something with paper. I love working with digital art, don't ever get me wrong on that one. Still got pencil lines here. I rubbed them all out. Apparently not. We'll get them. There we go. How could I miss those? Managed to crumple this and not get rid of the pencil lines. Jeepers. We have now. Oh, I know what it was. I put them on, didn't I? For the highlights. Okay, let's guess where the highlights are time. I'll manage it. After all, I've got the key ones in here, haven't I? So the rest are just a kind of bonus, I suppose. So they don't have to be perfect, you know, sort of shapes, the highlighted areas, because on a petal they wouldn't be, because petals aren't completely smooth. They've got what do you call, valleys and troughs on them, and not literally valleys and troughs, but you know, where the surface goes up and down, and like little folds sometimes, and all kinds of things going on there. If you've never looked closely at the petal of a flower, please do. And yet they can be quite reflective, but some aren't. Some don't have much in the way of a shiny surface. Some are quite downy. So they absorb a lot of light. They don't reflect much. But mine's going to have some reflection because I think it needs to. Moving my paper around. Trying to keep this in shot. Perhaps I can come in a bit so you can see closer what I'm doing as well. So on this side I am having them all quite close together on the edges with not much of a gap in terms of where there might be a highlight, because that would make sense on the edges, because the petals bend away in this direction as well. There's that one. And this one is going to be an interesting petal, because on this side, and I'll use this as my guide, the lines are going to curve this way, and on the other side they're going to curve in a slightly different way. And that's fine. You just go with it. That's why I suggest putting the lines in where the little notches are in the petal first, because it gives you those guides as to how you need to vary the way they curve, the way that they are. And where we've got a bigger space here, we can actually have fewer lines there, as it were. I'm making sure I've got plenty there for a shadow, and perhaps some here as well. The same here really. We want plenty at the base, or certainly some short ones in amongst the longer ones, just to add that extra shadow there behind the, you know, so the petals really do look like they're overlapping. Like so, and then like so. Again, plenty of lines fairly close together on the edge, but leaving that slightly open space or space without much in for that highlight. Beginning to get there, isn't it? Now my question to myself is, do I really need to add colour to this? I'm wondering. I really am. Do I need to? That is the question. I don't know. So my mind wandered then for a moment. Today feels like a day where summer holidays as a child, school holidays, and we'd be going off down to a local beach called Southern Down, and it would be sunny and it would be as warm as it is today. That breeze and the coolness of the air and the freshness of the air, and I used to love it. I loved the sea, but I loved exploring rock pools and fossils, loads of fossils, and the cliffs, which were dangerous to climb, so I didn't, but my brothers had a completely different idea and did. But the rocks there and things like that, rock pools and the life that was in them. I was always on my own as well. You know, I'm one of a big family. I said I've got 3 brothers and 2 sisters. And their friends would come along. And there'd be a lot of people, but I'd always be by myself, which explains a lot. In a weird way. But it's that kind of way I'm feeling, the temperature I'm feeling myself at, the wind that's coming in through the window, the sounds. It's very quiet out because the schools are on holiday. Summer holidays. And it just reminds me of that time. Just had a flashback to it. Trying to get me out of the sea when there was a thunderstorm was an impossibility. There. So what a difference that has made. I'll just zoom back out and try and get my head back in the here and now. I'm beginning to get goosebumps now. So that's really giving this some dimension. Now, before I do the next petals, I'm going to do something about this central bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill this with circles that are all close together, but I want ones towards the middle here to be bigger than the ones round the edge, which will hide behind things, because they won't be complete ones necessarily, because the petals are curling over them and hiding the whole centre from view. We can only see a little bit of it peeking up. And I'm going to fill all the little gaps in, so there's going to be quite a bit of black here. Just move this up so you can see what I'm doing. I apologise. Put one in there. This one could go there, there, here, space for a little one, and that one there. And then I'm going to put a black dot in the middle of each of them, just to bring them into focus or to make some sense out of them, if that, I don't know if that makes any sense. Of course, the ones that go underneath can still have their little black dot in, and perhaps that's hidden underneath the petals, or partly hidden underneath, just like that. So that makes some sense of that, and that intense darkness really sets that apart from the petals. So, put my eraser out of the way. I'm going to do the same kind of thing in these petals as I did on the ones around. So I'm going to start with this one, and again I think I'm going to start with these bits here, and I think I will adjust the shape of them as I go to something that's a bit more pointy, more obvious here, because you can do that. And I'm just going to add some at the bottom, just take this up the side, keeping lots towards the base, remembering to keep a space in the middle for the highlight, but we do want a lot of ink at the bottom because that's what gives the shadowing. Like so. Now I'm going to turn it the other way up, and I'm just going to put a small amount of shadowing on the upper edge, more towards the outer edges than anything else, because they would be a little bit more in shadow, I think, because of the way they're curving. Like so. These next ones are going to be interesting and a bit of a challenge, because this is going to come around here and this one's going to go there. So we can't actually see the base really of these petals, but we still need to work at it as if petals up here, but we need to work at it almost like we can. So I'm going to do some here. From the top down as well, just a little bit on that edge, a bit more along there. Here. There we go. This one actually could do with a bit more coming down in this section just to fill that in. And I'll use the same idea over here where I'm going to draw this one around, and this one is going to go that kind of way. And then that means we can work with these curves as a guide to where our lines and everything are going to go. Remembering to keep the highlights going. And then we've got this one. So we've nearly done all of this. Now I could fill these in with this kind of thing. I could have done that with the leaves, but I'm not going to. I'll use shading for that. And perhaps that's what I'll do here rather than add colour. I don't know. And then the last one is here, just these little dots at the ends. I'm forgetting to put the dots in now. like so. And then these ones. There. That is the flower done. The leaves do look terribly bare. I'm not going to try and do contour lines on them because they'll end up just being full of contour lines. Now, how am I going to add colour or shade to these? I'm going to turn over onto the back and I'm going to try something out because I want to see whether coloured pencils are going to dull these lines in. So they're going to dull the lines. I ain't going to use coloured pencils and Gamsol. But if I can see through them, if I get some colours there, then I surely will use them. So I've got some yellow there. I might use, let's have a look at this. This is a purpley colour. I can certainly see the lines through this, so that'll be all right. And then for the leaves, oh, there's a lovely, lovely soft green here. Not the mid green. Oh, it's one of the ones there, this colour, green. And what I've got here, hopefully fingers crossed this will work. This is a De La Rowney mixed media paint marker. It comes empty though. And I have filled this with Gamsol, which is the solvent I use for blending coloured pencils. And I'm going to use this with my coloured pencils to blend them. And it should work, which it does. Just. Not as well as I'd hoped, but it saves faffing around with tapping things onto bottles of whatever. So that does work. But the pencil on its own does work because you can still see the ink through. So that makes me quite happy. Now, I want to use colours. I've got that purple out, but I'm not entirely sure I do want to use purple for this. That's a deep fuchsia. Let's have a look. Fuchsia actually might work for some of it, but I do want a lighter pink. Got a peach there. This is what backs of paper are for. Oh, the peach isn't going to show up at all. Let's be honest. But perhaps does it mix with the fuchsia? This isn't going to work. Right, that one doesn't work. Back to the old standbys. Tortillons, which do work. I've got a few here that I'm keeping just for coloured pencils. So let's have a look and see if we can get those two to blend. I think this has got a tip that is has more friction, which helps the colours to move. That may work. I'm not entirely sure about the fuchsia though. I'm not entirely sure this is a good idea with Distress Oxides because I think it's mixing the oxides in. What to do? What to do? We'll just take this. Oh gosh, not again, Angela. Still got some pencil on there. There's another reason I'm doing this, and that is to get off all the loose pigment ink before I do anything else here. Because if I decide to use watercolours, then I don't want pigment ink to shift with them, which it will do. But I do like this just as it is, actually. Right, colours pencils away. You can do that, Angela. You can pop them away. That needs to stay flat. That needs the lid on so I don't poison myself with fumes. The tortillons can go back in their little plastic bag they came in. And I can then pop them in with these. I don't think I want to use watercolour. I think I'm going to just... Oh, ow. Where is my pencil? I had it yesterday. Sure, I popped one in one of these. One idiot. Okay, I've got this. My Pitt graphite pencils. I haven't got my 4B. I've put it somewhere safe and I don't know where safe is. But I need to go back in there for one of these. This one will do, or probably. So I'm going to use graphite to add some shadow in places. Very lightly, not too much. I know then if I decide to add colour I can at another date. So I'm going to, on this one, I'm going to add some on the tips of the leaves and the base to begin with. Let's do the leaves. The nice thing about the Pitt graphites is that they remain fairly matte. They're much matter in finish because ordinary graphite pencils, they go ever so shiny. And these also don't blend out quite so easily. So it's a lot easier to keep them contained, I find. Like so. So I'm looking again to where the lines are thicker, and that's where I'm adding some extra graphite just to add that shadow on the edge of the leaves. And again, we'll compare and contrast this one and this one as I'm working. How about that? See, if I thought now, I'm just thinking I could have got my chalk pastels out. So that does make a difference. It brings it to life, even if it's in monochrome life. So let's do the same now here, because I've worked out where I'm going to put the graphite. It's going to be where I've thickened these lines, and so that means I'll be able to work that a little bit quicker now. Once you've made that decision, you can do. And all I'm really wanting to do with the graphite is to work it into the paper and just soften the edges that little bit and tidy up my addition of graphite. I'm not fussing around getting it perfect because I know I'm going to be blending it with Tortillon. That needs a bit more blending, that one. The other thing about this as well is that as long as you're not too heavy-handed when you blend it in, you can always use an eraser to pick up any of the extra that you've popped there if you've added too much or you haven't left enough of a highlight. Oh, now there's a thought. How am I going to add highlights to this? Because no doubt I will. Now I could go through this and add graphite to every section and then come back and blend it all, but I quite like having a break from doing the same thing over and over. And here I am going to get that pesky kneadable eraser because I have added just a little bit too much here. So I can just gently erase some and then come back where I've erased too much more and just add a little bit more. Subtle, but it's done. Okay. Funny memory to come back. Isn't memory funny how different things can bring them back? If I'm driving through dappled shade towards this time of year or later on in the summer, and it's sort of like the sun is beginning to set, and it's green dappled shade below trees, obviously, then I have a strong memory of a book that I had out again and again from the library, and it was something to do with a dinosaur and a boy. I'm reading that in the car on the way home because I'd taken it with me to the beach so I could read it, which I didn't, but I could have if I'd wanted to. And I can remember getting home and, we'd go home, and back in the day, we'd be in bed by 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock, it depended on your age. It was by 6 o'clock, certainly when we were young. And then as you got older, you were allowed to stay up a bit longer. And Friday nights you could stay up a little bit longer as well because we didn't have school the next day. And it wasn't until I was probably in secondary school, so 11, 12, where it was quite common to stay up until 9 o'clock at night, unless there would be, what's it called? I think it was called Call My Bluff was on, and a couple of other television programmes that I'd enjoy. And I was, you were allowed to stay up and watch those till 9:30. And I think one of them was on after the Waltons. So we'd have to watch the Waltons. A fairly functional family as compared to mine. But then, are many families functional? I don't know, is the answer. I know mine was dysfunctional. And I think Call My Bluff was on afterwards. But that book and that memory of reading it, I can't remember what the story was, and yet I don't know if I ever finished it. Confession time, I love to read, but when it's a much loved book or series of books, I can find it really hard to finish the book, because that means that everything is over. Right, for this, I'm putting shading underneath where the leaf, so this leaf goes in front for a while, so I'm going to put shading there, just as if it's throwing a bit of a shadow. I mean, logically it wouldn't if the light's coming from this direction, but I want to bring that out, and I'm going to add some shadow down here and just there as well. And I'll approach them all in the same kind of way. That needs a bit more there. So let's have a look. Did add a little bit more on the end there because that was quite bright. Funny what brings memories back. Smell can't it? Particularly smell just seems to have a hotline straight to the memory vault in your head. And you only need that one smell, and suddenly you can be back in a place in your obviously in your memory, not literally, but a time and a place, and the memories are so vivid of it, whether it's good or bad. Complex post-traumatic stress disorder. The flashbacks are often emotional flashbacks, and they can be triggered by things like sight, or smell, taste, music, sound, time of day even, or in a similar kind of place or circumstances to where the trauma happened. But it's all very emotional, and it's odd what things can trigger that off. You may not remember exactly what happened, but you remember the emotions that you were feeling and the thoughts you may have had. It's sort of like loud, aggressive voices, full stop, but teenage voices will have me running for my car. Well, walking very fastly. Well, no. Walking with great purpose and not going to be diverted anywhere. I'm not thinking about anything else. Getting back to my car and getting home, which is a safe place for me, but then getting home as quickly as I can to my total safe space. That's one of my triggers, I know that. There are others, but crowds, that press and noise, and off I go. We will deal with the stem in a moment, do not fret. So I've just done all the leaves. That one's not going to be a very good one, but we'll have a look now and see how it goes. Perhaps I'm just fretting too much. I'm beginning to rush, which is not a good thing, Angela. Come on, calm, calm. Right, here, there's going to be a lot of shadow underneath here. But I do want shadow on either side of the stem. I certainly do round here. And at the base of it, I think we'll have some. But underneath this is definitely a place where I want plenty of shadow. Because that is an important feature. That's what helps to bring this to life, in the respect of we've got this almost like there's a slit in the paper. I am going to put pencil just on the left hand side of the stem. The stem is really, oh, I haven't done these ones up here. That's okay, we can do those now. Fine. And at the top of the stem there's going to be a fair amount because that will be in shadow underneath the flower. I do want to try and leave some highlight on the stem, but I really do want the shadow more towards the left than anywhere else, so we've got some there. So that's those done, I think. This would need some shadow because this will go up and down, and I'm reckoning that we'd have some shadow on this, perhaps here. There'd definitely be shadow underneath that. These leaves, wouldn't there? And let's just have a look, because this would be a little bit of shadow from the leaves, but it's that feeling that we're going to have some shadow here because this will have risen up and the top of it will have caught some light, whereas the edges may not have. Just like that. In fact, I've most probably done a bit too much on the edges, so I can just knock it back a little bit, and that works now. And I think we'd have shadow underneath as well, so I'm going to put a fair amount of shadow in here just to extend that kind of feeling. And while I'm at this, I may as well put some shadow on to lift this up off the paper as well. So I'm going to do drop shadows, what we call drop shadows, left and bottom around the leaf. And I'm just going to use my pencil just to smudge this out and extend the shadow just that little bit. Shadow should be kind of darkest closest to it. That's not strictly true. We're not having any reflected light here today. So we're just going to go with this. And that starts to lift that up and give some idea that this is on the paper. You know, it's dimensional. Now here with the paper, I am going to add a lot of shadow where this is. Underneath here, there would be a bigger shadow there because the leaf would be further away from the paper than it appears. Now I'm going to put some shadow that side. The same is true of this one. So, and here. So let's have a look at these now. This is definitely going to find its way into the junky journal, or the non-junk journal I'm going to be making. I'm saying non-junk journal. We use the ideas from junk journaling to a degree. The mechanisms, I suppose, the interactive aspects. And just see where it all goes. Okay, let's carry on. Oh, damn. Me and my clumsiness using an eraser. Right, so we're going to add shadows here, around here, around here, there, there, and I'm going to add a little bit where that weight is. Down this side of the stem as well, down the left hand side of the stem, I'm going to add shadow, but not on the right hand side. because I'm following the same rules of adding shadow as I have for everything else here, really. So there's that one. This one is going to be under here, all the way around here to get that shadowy effect there, there. That's a little bit there. I just love that I don't have to be so tidy with this. If you're very heavy-handed with pencil, you need to be tidy, because as you press with the pencil, the graphite will get pressed in the paper and you'll find it harder to smooth it out, as it were. Because part of the process of using a tortillon or a paper stump is to work the graphite into the paper so it's less likely to smudge. And this is definitely a candidate now, this one, for Modus Podgus. Or I've got some Liquitex satin medium on its way, to be delivered any time soon, I would think. So if it arrives, I'll be experimenting with this. Am I worried it will muck it up? Yes and no. If it does, well, it does. If it doesn't, woohoo. But if it does, well, I can always draw something like this again, can't I? You know, nothing is ever permanently, you know, it's not that you can't redo things. I won't be able to do it exactly this way, you know, very similar. But I won't fret if, you know, if something happens. I'm more worried about Distress Oxide, I suppose, than anything else. Right, let's get shadow up here and here. And I'll then do the rest of the leaves, and then I shall come back and tackle the flower and all the shadows around there. Oh, YouTube's going to love me uploading another 2-hour video, 2-hour plus possibly. Who'd have thought it? Oh, I haven't done this one. It's okay, we can always go back. And I'm forever looking at things as I look at them from a different direction and go, right, okay, that needs a bit more blending in. That needs a touch more graphite. And that's fine to do, that's what you should be doing. Nothing is really set in stone. So I said, if you've added too much graphite, as long as you haven't pressed too hard with your tortillon or pencil, you can always erase it. Now I know that in Zentangle that you don't use erasers, but this is me talking, and this isn't really Zentangle. The approach I've taken to drawing this, looking for shapes, basic shapes, you know, the way that things are arranged, and using that as my framework, is something I've always done. It's not something that I sort of like had to be told or anything. It may come from me having good observational skills, of doing lots of work like this in science, for example, where you'd have to look at things and in a different way than art, because you'd have to, whatever you were drawing would have to be recognisable and would have to focus on the basic elements of what was there. Colours weren't necessarily important. In fact, I used to get told off for having flowery descriptions of colours of products, especially inorganic ones. It's amazing colours. Blue wasn't good enough for me. Well, yes, but it's light blue. It's blue. It's light blue. That one's dark blue. That one is a royal blue. And they just gave up with me in the end and just said, oh, just whatever. You know. So there's all my leaves done. Yeah. Now I'll zoom in while I do. Shall I? Yeah, I'll zoom in. Yes, I did zoom in. Just took a while for it to think about it. So I'm going to look where my lines are closest together, and bearing in mind I'll want shadow on the edges of the petals. But I've got a lot of lines here, so I'm going to put a fair amount of graphite there, I've got lines here as well, so I'll want some graphite on the edge here. Definitely want some around the edge. And then we're just going to gently smooth this out and work it in. And that's my Amazon delivery, so I will be back in a moment. There we are, Amazon delivery done. And I've managed to buy acrylic of satin varnish. We can but try. So, where was I? Oh yeah, I was doing the petals, wasn't I? I've had some books as well. I've got a couple of books on zines. And I've got a Flower Fairy, the Complete Flower Fairies book. I have no idea why. I think something caught my attention about it and I thought, I'll get that to have a look at. Now, this middle bit here is looking a bit grubby, but I just think it's the Distress ink. I hope it's just the Distress ink. Now, where these overlap, I'm really going to go quite heavy with the graphite, and I'm not going to blend it out very far, but I do want to have some shading around there. Now, if I'd used chalk pastels, I could have got some colour on here, but I didn't. But it'll be fine. If I want to add colour, I can always do that another time, or I can go over it with some kind of paint medium. Again, there's an overlap here, so I'm going to go quite heavy with the pencil there around the edges. I do want some. I think I do want to have some that actually extend where these are really, so it looks like we've got little nooks and little bits there. I haven't finished adding graphite around here. You might be able to see where I've got this bit here and here. Just move that. Just get that. These ones here coming from those little folded, the little bits there. Then if we add graphite there, it makes it look like we've got a little dip there, as if there's something going on there. Little hints and tips. I might just put a bit of one there, because there could be. And I'm making these bend with the petal as well. Straight lines wouldn't work, but this does. So let me have a look. Let's just add a bit more graphite to these and then just buff it out. I might just need a little bit more at the bases, to be honest, because they are looking a bit on the not so dark side. That'll be fine. So let's have a look here. So again, I'm going to add some here and here, around here because there's an overlap, here because we're overlapping, around the edge a little bit, and perhaps just along the edge of the tips. So we've got that. There's that. Graphite, adding shadow with graphite is not my favourite technique, but I'm beginning to warm to it after this one. I'm beginning to warm to it because it's making such a difference to these petals. My only wish was that I'd used chalk pastels with colours. But that I can do in another time, can't I? For now, this will do quite nicely. And I'm going to come back and add some white highlights. I have got a white charcoal pencil here, white charcoal. So I think that would help to bring some of the highlights back as well, and to really help with the contrast between these grey shadows and elsewhere. It does take a little while to do, it does take a little bit of practice to do this, but there are just simple things that you can do to help. It's looking for places where you would have natural shadows, so where things overlap. I always think of shadows to the left and bottom. I stick to that rule, and I'm looking here for little things that I can use as a way of putting shadow in to bring out some almost like folds, some shape to the petals, to, contours, that's the word I'm groping for, I think, to add some interest in that, so they're not just, you know, one-dimensional. There's a lot more to them. This isn't something that I do a lot of in my art, my very stylized art generally, and this is ending up much more realistic. The flower is, to a degree, still quite stylized, especially as I'm not doing anything from observation. I'm just using what I know about shadows and shadowing and how to work with light and dark to get that feeling of volume out. But there is just something lovely about bringing things to life, even like this with graphite. The lines did it partially, didn't they? But the graphite is really enhancing that, adding to it. So it's, you know, it's definitely an enhancement. I just hate the way that graphite makes things look grubby. To my mind, it does, it looks grubby. To yours, you may think not, but I think it does. And in some ways, I'm quite happy doing this, because that background texture I put on with stencils and the colours of Distress ink are still showing through. Now, there's going to be a lot of graphite at the base of this. Again, I'm going to pop shadow in around the edges, and I'm going to put some shadow where those dips in the edge in the petals are, and use that to bring out some highlight shadows, some of that contour texture, I suppose. Well, not texture, it's volume, it's dimension. My petals are plumptuous petals. I love the word plumptuous. There we go. Plumptuous petals. And remember, wherever there's going to be a shadow, plenty of graphite, but don't blend it out too far or too much, because everything will become the same colour. And we don't want that. If anything, I could do with probably using a different tortillon or cleaning this one up, to be honest. But I'm going to stick with it. There we go. And there's this. Forget that shadow there. Some here. I want that little dip in the petal, as it were. Now, I have added way too much graphite here, so I am going to use my eraser in a moment to just bring out those highlighted areas. I've got somewhere a Tombow mono eraser, which is really fine. In fact, I've got two of them. I bought a new one because I couldn't find the first one. I got no idea where either of them are. They'll turn up eventually. Now, around what seems to be the top of these petals, I actually don't want too much in the way of shadow, because they're actually closer to the light than the bases here. And I still don't want too much in the way of shadow, if I can help it, because I don't want to lose this structure. So I think I will swap to a finer, tinier, littler tortillon, and one that's clean. Oh, that one's got a soft end, which is not good. There we are. We'll just snip it off. Way off you go. Bye-bye, little tip end. Try and contain this as much as I can. There we go. And so those are the petals of the flower. I'll zoom out so we can have a good look at the overall thing. There you are. What do you think? Is it looking okay so far? I definitely need some more shadows in places. Here could do with some more. Just that darkness. It's going to have to do for now. Okay, I'm going to add shadow under the petals here and here. Under here there's going to be some, as there will be under here. We're doing drop shadows, so this is going to be halfway up, and the same here until I start turning over, or the line would start turning over to go to the top. I'm just looking for places that are still sort of like bent under or to the left, where I can just pop some shadow on and help to lift this up off the page. I've been particularly messy with my graphite, putting it on very lightly, and I'm going to go back to this bigger tortillon because I want to blend this out to a bigger area just to get that shadow, drop shadowing going on around it. Here. I know I haven't done the middle of the flower yet. I will do. I'm going to get there, honest. Patience, please. We're nearly there. We're nearly at the end. Nearly. Honestly. Well, of the graphite anyway. So I'm just putting shadow around and there. So that is the flower. Oh gosh, drippy nose again. I'm sure it's because it's 15 degrees Celsius. Hey Google, what's 15 Celsius in Fahrenheit?
15 degrees Celsius is 59 degrees Fahrenheit.
There you are. So those of you who work in Fahrenheit, 59 degrees Fahrenheit according to the Google. So 15 degrees Celsius is actually quite cool, even for me. Righty-ho. Excuse the noise. I've got a General's chalk pastel here. Somewhere I've put my glasses down. Over there. So this is a white chalk pencil, and I'm going to use it to add highlights, just to help to bring some structure out. And you can see that the colours underneath are still showing through, or the patterns underneath are still showing through. And I am going to tidy this one up because I did find my you can use pieces of sandpaper or emery boards to clean your tortillons, and they last for a long time then. And if they end up getting a bit stuck in there, can't see the thing I'm looking for. Yes, I can. This is a broken sort of like very long cocktail stick or fine thing. Just pop that in and you can just push the end out again to get a nice sharp point. It works. So here I just want to try and push that chalk into the paper so it's not going to move. This is where I think I may need to get that spray Mod Podge somebody recommended or says you can get. Because I know if I'm going to use that Liquitex, it's going to smudge this everywhere. So what can I do? What I can do is to put a cover over it to protect it. Something like vellum. or tracing paper, so you get a ghost of the image through that. I've rubbed it in too much here and I haven't really paid attention to these areas in between those black bits I added, remember? You don't want to work it in too much because the chalk will then seem to disappear, but this should be okay. And yes, I'm going to attack the leaves. God knows how long this is going to take to upload. Process and then upload and then process again. I suspect I'll be letting my computer and YouTube get on with it once I've done the editing and stuff, you know. Using charcoal and chalk takes me right back to my A-level days, which wasn't that long ago because I didn't do it while I was in sixth form in school. In fact, I didn't do art in school when I was a pupil. I was told I was no good at it, and I wasn't allowed to take art as an option. Not that I wanted to. A year of drawing my own hand had killed any interest whatsoever I had in art. I don't mind drawing people, but from the neck down to the wrist and then down to the ankles without clothes. Not out of any sort of titillation, it's just the human body is very architectural. Okay, I'm going to add highlights on these now, and I've just remembered I didn't do anything with that inner bit, did I? And I need to. I'll do that now. I'm trying not to stick my hand on graphite and or chalk because it will get stuck to my hand. This one I want shadow all the way around the outside of this, and I'm going to put a highlight in the middle, but I'm going to do the shading first, as I've done elsewhere, and then pop the shadow on. Still got a tortillon here that's got some graphite on, so just going to darken this up just a smidge, and then the white can go over the top here, and I can just blend it in then very gently. Everything just shows through, and I'm not going to go back and add anything to that. I'm not going to go back and re-ink. Okay, so down the stem I'm going to put white chalk towards the left hand side. It's not going down very easily because I've got quite a lot of graphite on here, but there's enough gone down just to give spots of highlight to add that brightness there. This here, I'm going to put chalk across the middle, and I'm just going to gently smooth that in. There we go. So that's added some interest. And then on my leaves, I'm going to put white chalk where there would be highlights. I'm trying to keep it off the ink, but there's no guarantee I can manage to do that. Yeah, I'm using a tortillon that's got graphite on, but not a lot of it in these little spaces because the bigger one will. So I'm looking for where I can put the chalk on, the white on, just to bring out the highlights, and it's going to be where basically where there isn't graphite. If I can find anywhere on some of these. If not, it'll go over the top of the graphite without any problem. This one has got quite a big area of highlight actually. I may come back and use a white gel pen just to add some extra white dots, maybe. I don't know. See how I feel about this once I've finished. Working this way is making me think that I might actually get on with gouache, where you put your, dark layers down first because they're opaque and you work to your lighter ones. And that sort of like is appealing to me more and more as I'm working with this. You shall see. It's going to have to be acrylic gouache though, which will dry waterproof. Permanent. As I suspect that me adding wet gouache to dry gouache, I'll end up in a right mess. Always have when I've tried it before, so I didn't know you could get such a thing as acrylic gouache. But you can. And some people might say, oh, you might as well use acrylic paints. The problem is that most acrylic paints aren't, well, there's a lot of them aren't opaque, not in the same way that gouache is opaque. And they aren't chalky or that matte kind of colour either. They tend to be shiny. How do I know that? Because I've got some acrylic paintings hanging in my room here that I did when I was doing my A-level. Or AS, I can't remember which. AS, I think. And I dislike... Oh, were they oil? No, they were oils, actually. I used oils for 2. And I used acrylic for the blue. I used oils for the warm coloured ones. And then I used blues and white for my cooler, more spiritually based one. All abstracts. I do love an abstract. If you hadn't guessed. If only I could marry all of this stuff together. Not sure how cute kawaii and the weird monsters and robots and things I like to draw from time to time would fit in, but I'd make them. It could be little guides through my art, making commentary on the way and explaining stuff, which would be ridiculous. So here I'm just adding lines where there's highlights on the petals just to increase that highlight. And the lines I'm going in the same shape as these are. I'm just looking for the highest points just to increase that lightness. I haven't got any hairspray. A light spray of hairspray will stop this moving. It will fix it sort of temporarily. I have got Spectrafix, but Spectrafix is not nice. So I've got a lot more white there now. Didn't do this one, did I? Have now. I'm still going to blend these in that little bit where I've added those lines, because I just want to try to get that extra bit of whiteness there without resorting to gel pens, because gel pens would look very obviously gel pens on this. Just want that white there, just to bring out that. And that's it. That is the Arts and Crafts flower. I am going to put my initials or signature on here if I use the 01. I will actually sign it. And today is it's the 7th August 2023. I will scan this in so you get to see it scanned in. I hope you've enjoyed this very long video. And even more surprising, I've used graphite and charcoal. I wouldn't have done so if the background hadn't been coloured, by the way. If it had been plain, I might have used some kind of colouring tools or media of some kind or another. But today, I used this Distress Oxide background, and do you know what? I'm so glad I did, because I really, really like how this looks. Very different for me, or what you're used to seeing from me. The style of drawing may not be, but adding shadow and highlight is. Having said that, I used to love working with chalk and charcoal on huge sheets of paper. I've still got some drawings of mine, and one of them is a huge trilobite, which scared the bejeebers out of one of the art teachers, because she didn't realise it was a fossil and extinct. And I had a great amount of fun and time explaining to her that they were extinct. I'm going to say goodbye because there's another delivery. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you again soon.